Hey everybody, Father Warner here. It's the Saturday, the 18th of October, and today is the feast of Saint Luke the Evangelist. Now, I'm going to take you first through several things that you need to know about Saint Luke. Oh, by the way, in the description box of every video, I put previous teachings that I've done, links also to my blog, pottipadre.com, which I have not written on for a while, but you will find other teachings in the description box just below this video. Uh, if you're, I notice that most of the viewers watch these teachings on their mobile phone, so you will see it just below this video. It will say description box, and then you'll get all the other links. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about Saint Luke and his life before I go on to a couple of reflections that I put down. First, we don't know for sure whether St. Luke was a Jew who converted to the faith, to following Christ. We have no clear evidence that he was an early convert to Christianity from Judaism. In all probability, he was a Greek speaking Gentile who encountered Paul and then, of course, forged a great relationship, a great friendship with St. Paul. We know where he came from. He comes from Antioch in Turkey, and he made a living as a physician. How do we know this? St. Paul makes a reference to him in Colossians chapter 4, verse 4, where St. Paul calls him the beloved physician. Now, we, by the way, happy feast to all those in the medical practice, whether you're doctors. It's technically the feast of doctors, but doctors and nurses and all those of you in the pharmaceutical field, happy feast to you. So, St. Luke is the patron of doctors, among many other things. Now, we know that St. Luke was a companion of St. Paul up to his martyrdom. He was with him at his martyrdom in Rome. He joined St. Paul at Troas. If you read Acts of the Apostles, chapter 16, verse 11, uh, you begin, this is after the great council of Jerusalem, which took place in Acts chapter 15, and Paul goes out on his missionary journey. For the second missionary journey, he is joined by Luke. It's called the V narratives. St. Paul begins to write as in the third person, in we. Now, he wrote, we know that St. Luke wrote the third gospel, the Gospel of Luke, but he also wrote the Acts of the Apostles. He's writing this, there's a common golden thread going through. He, at the start of the Gospel of Luke and at the start of the Acts of the Apostles, he refers to Theophilus. Now, Theophilus could have been a person, Theophilus could have been a group of people, because Theo is God and Phyllis is lover of. So, those who are lovers of God. It could also be a name. In Goa, one of the names that you have for women is Deodita. For example, Deo is God, Dita is give. So, it could refer to a person, it could refer to a group of people who give to God, just as you have Theophilus. So, we know that he joined St. Paul in his missionary journey, and he wrote both the Gospel in 80 AD and the Acts of the Apostles, which really records the work of the Holy Spirit in the church from 33 AD right up till 60 AD. Now, when you look at the works of the Acts of the Apostles and the Gospel, it cumulatively accounts for about 38,000 words in the New Testament. Almost 24% of the New Testament, therefore, was the contribution of Saint Luke. Now, Saint Luke died in uh, in a place which was a region of Greece. Uh, I really don't know how to pronounce this. I'm not sure, but I think it's Boeotia. And it was there that he was first buried, in the city of Thebes in this region of Greece, till his body was moved to Constantinople in the year 357 by Saint Helen, the mother of Constantine, of the Emperor Constantine. And then it was in Constantine, it was kept in the Basilica of the Holy Apostles. And then at some stage, which of course historians are still looking into, we don't know for certain, his body, or rather the relics, most of his body was brought to Italy. Now, many of us go to the city of Padua, and because of Saint Anthony of Padua, and then we tend to, in fact, the tour guides just miss this church, which, by the way, is in walking distance or along the way to the shrine of Saint Anthony. They completely miss the church of Saint Justina, in which, when you enter the church, on the left hand side is the tomb which houses the relics of Saint Luke, uh, and also the apostle, um, one more apostle on the right hand side. Uh, I can't get the name, but it houses two of the apostles. Now, Saint Luke is, sorry, it has two saints. Saint Luke is an evangelist, but the other one I know is an apostle. I just can't get the name right now. Comes down to age. I'm getting old. Okay. Now, Saint Luke is the patron, as I said, among many things, of doctors, but he's also the patron of artists. And let me tell you why. Uh, Tradition holds that Saint Luke encountered our Blessed Mother. Of course, he was with Paul. He must have come. He came back to Jerusalem with Paul, and must have met our Blessed Mother at some stage or the other. And history, or rather tradition, holds that he painted, some say four, some say five images of our Blessed Mother. Many, all, and I've seen three of the four. I think it's more four than five. I have seen three of the four. Um, it's called the Hodigetria style, where our Blessed Mother, one hand is pointing to Jesus. Now, you've seen it too, because I've seen the original in Rome of two of them. One is Our Lady of Perpetual Succor, which is in the Church of St. Alphonsus Liguri. The last Mass I said, along with Father Sean and Father Andrew, or rather the last church I preached in on the Eastern Europe tour, was in St. Alphonsus Liguri, thanks to the kindness of Father Ivel Mendana. And then, so that's one of the images, Our Lady of Perpetual Succor, painted by St. Luke. Then in Rome, you also have the Salus Populi Romani, which is the church, which is the icon where Pope Francis wanted to be buried very close to Mother Mary, who is the salvation of the Roman people. It's in Santa Maria Maggiore, which is in Rome. That's the second image. The third image, which I have also seen, the painting done by St. Luke. I had the privilege on this Eastern Europe tour, which I think is better than the Western Europe tour for many reasons, more spiritual reasons, was in Czestochowa, Jasna Gora. Jasna Gora really means the bright mountain, and it is in Czestochowa. And this is the image of what is now come to be called the Black Madonna, with the two scars that you'll see on her face. There's a beautiful history about that image, which a copy of which was given by our Holy Father Saint John Paul II when he came in 1986 to the seminary in Bombay. It lies in the third floor of the seminary in what we call the Father's Chapel. So that was the third. And the fourth image, painted by St. Luke, was in Constantinople, modern day Turkey. I'm not really sure if you know where that fourth image is. I was trying to research, I couldn't really find. But this is the Hodigetria style, as I said, Our Lady always pointing to Jesus and Jesus raising his hand in a blessing. Now, I want to give you a few reflections based on this wonderful feast that we celebrate. And the first is based on friendship, because St. Luke and St. Paul were great friends. Remember, I told you that till the bitter end, Luke was with St. Paul. In 2 Timothy chapter 4:11, Paul says Luke alone is with me. Everybody had to either abandoned St. Paul or went out in mission, and Luke alone stays. And here's something I want to share with you today. I have many acquaintances in my life, but I have a few friends. And I notice that when I now gravitate towards people, it's a spiritual relationship that we share as much as one of, of friendship, of camaraderie, of, backslapping. But it's a spiritual relationship. Many of my friendships are built on deep spiritual relationships because these are people who have been close to the Lord. And I want to recommend this, choose buddies who strengthen your faith, not just who are drinking buddies or golf buddies or, uh, I hope not gossip buddies, but choose people who are close to the faith. So that, because, we're all going to go in through a stage of life when, life, uh, there's a thunderstorm over our head. And that's when we want someone to hold a spiritual umbrella of strength, of courage. I always say this also to lay people. Do you have a priest who is a friend? Have a priest friend, someone that you can not only go to as for your confession, but just go for a light hearted conversation, go and share a meal from time to time. I share a meal. I'm very, how do I say it? I don't know whether you'd even believe me, but I'm an introvert. Somebody gave me they said, no, Father, you're not an introvert. They gave me some other term. But I believe, I have been pushed into the public limelight because of the priesthood, because of these videos. But if you ask me, I love to stay at home. I'm a home bird. I shy away from people. Sometimes I really don't know what to say when I meet people. I push myself. It's an effort, and maybe that's the reason why I often stay at home. But make friends with priests. I have a few close friends. There are my friends from Orlem. We call each other, we call ourselves the Pact. We are a group of 8 of us who are very close. I have friends also scattered across the world who over the years have been very close to. I now have a few friends in my former parish. I won't tell you who they are. Two wonderful ladies uh, in their 80s. And I really have a great friendship with them. I have made sure that I have young friends, young people who I continue to form great friendship with. I have a few priest friends. Yeah, all priests are not my friends, but I have a few priest friends on this trip, on this pilgrimage. I particularly bonded in a very special way with Father Sean, who I almost felt like a spiritual father to him, like an older brother. So you constantly make these kind of friendships. I've told you, my own confessor for the longest time here in Goa was a young priest who was just, I think, 3 years ordained in the ministry. So make friends uh, with people who are connected to Jesus, who have a deep rooted relationship to Jesus over different age groups. And it's beautiful to do that. You'll say, Father, I'm pretty old. I don't know anybody in who is young. Go to the church compound, start a conversation. Okay, so that's one thing I want to share with you. Second, St. Luke gives us a unique insight into the life of Christ, into the mercy of Christ. You see this in all his texts. Luke chapter 15, it's the only gospel that has the lost coin, the lost sheep, the lost son. Luke is the only one who gives us the widow of Nain and the great mercy of God towards this woman. Luke's gospel is the only gospel that talks about the Good Samaritan, mercy shown to strangers, even those who are not of our faith, not of our race. So there is this great aspect of mercy that we see in Luke's gospel. But Luke also keeps for us the Mother of God ever before our eyes. Mary is the Magnificat of Mary is presented to us by Luke. Luke is the only gospel that gives us the birth of Jesus. It gives us the annunciation. It gives us the visitation. It gives us the presentation. In fact, most of the Lucan, the infancy narratives that we have come from Luke and Matthew, but more from Luke. The shepherds, for example, the narrative of the shepherds is unique only to the Gospel of Luke. It is Luke who tells us that Jesus was wrapped in swaddling clothes and laid in a manger. I mean, that line just makes us smile because it reminds us of Christmas. And Luke constantly gives us the not only the infancy narratives, he presents to us, before us, the image of the Mother of God, and we are grateful for this, for what Saint Luke gives us. Saint Luke, also being a physician, tended to healing bodies, but he also tended to healing souls. He tells us in Luke chapter 5, verse 3, those who are well do not need a doctor. But remember, he reminds us that Jesus came for those who were sick in their souls. Today we focus so much on the healing of the body or the presentation of the body, either through our beauty products or going through a gym and making ourselves gym fit, or fit for whatever, which is good. Yeah, I don't think somebody should walk into church looking like something that the cat dragged in, or like my dear friend Father Larry would say, like an unkept bed. We should present ourselves well. We should comb our hair. We should, yes, if you have dry skin like I do, use some cream, whatever. Present ourselves well, so we focus on the body, we exercise. But what about our soul? Is our soul healthy? What percentage of our life is devoted to keeping our soul well, in good standing? And I say, what percentage of our life? Because we spend so much of our life caring for the body, and finally eternity demands our soul. Eternity doesn't will never get your body, because it will corrupt. Yeah, it will rot, it will stink. But our soul is something that we will present to God. And St. Luke teaches us to keep before us both a healthy body and a healthy soul. He did that by teaching us the teachings of Jesus. He kept the teachings of Jesus ever before us. St. Luke left behind for us, at the age of 84, when he passed away. We don't know whether he passed away due to old age or whether he passed away as a martyr, even though the vestments we wear on his feast day are red, because by tradition in some places it is held that he was a martyr. But when he died, he left behind us for us the Gospels and the Acts of the Apostles. Now, when Luke wrote this orderly account, I use that word orderly account because he writes to Theophilus and he says, I'm leaving you an orderly account. He has taken the trouble. He has interviewed St. Paul, met Our Lady, interviewed her, met the apostles, interviewed them. And now he writes an orderly account. But when he wrote this orderly account for Theophilus, little would he have imagined that billions of people would one day read this gospel. So this is what I want to say is you sow seeds. Yeah, you continue. Saint Luke wrote an orderly account. He never knew that it would be taken, it would become part of the Bible. He just sowed the seed. You and I are called to sow seeds. Your contribution to the faith is not insignificant. I don't believe that. I don't know where these videos will go. I don't know whom they will reach. I don't know whether it will get 2 views or 2 million views. I have no clue. But my job is to sow the seed of the faith in the hearts of as many as I can, and that's what I'm doing. Now, why did Luke write this orderly account? Because he was in love with Christ. Why do I teach? Because I'm trying to be in love with Christ with all my heart. I fail the Lord more often than ever, and I am ashamed sometimes when I fail him. But Luke loved Christ. He wanted Christ to be made known. This is the meaning of an evangelist, an evangelizer, one who talks about the evangelium, the good news of Jesus Christ. Uh, and here's a lovely quote that I found of Pope Francis when he says this, because Luke loved Christ. And Pope Francis says this: what kind of love would not feel the need to speak of the beloved, to point out the beloved, to make the beloved known? What kind of love? Yeah. if you have somebody that you love, you want to share them with your family, you want to share them with your friends, you will talk about them, you'll share pictures on Instagram of the two of you because your heart is bursting with love. Is my heart bursting with love enough to make Christ known? We need not only to defend Christ today or defend Christianity. Christ doesn't need us defending him. Christ can defend himself. But we not only need to speak up for Christianity, and very validly sometimes, but we need to speak of Christ in our life. So people today are conversing about their holidays or talk about their holidays, what kind of restaurant they went to, what kind of meal they ate. Yet these conversations only speak to how we live our life. We need to share conversations that bring life, not just how we live our life, but our conversations that we share must be those that are life giving and bringing life to others. So here's what I want to say, like St. Luke, share your account of life, of your experience of Christ. People listen to stories, they love stories. Once upon a time is a great way to get everybody's attention in the room. So talk about your once upon a time experiences. Talk about your Jesus stories. You don't need to preach it. Today, I think people are a bit put off when, and I'm not saying the job of preaching is only those of the clergy. You can also preach, but people don't like preachy people. And sometimes I have to, get a grip of myself. People don't like preachy people. They like people who share um, their stories. Once upon a time, I was lost, but now I'm found. And talk about those because, uh, you know, uh, I that's why I talk very often of my failures. I don't talk about, I talk about the fact that, I am not a brilliant person, as I keep telling you. I have to just work harder. And then God uses you, God raises you, God fills you, God strengthens you. So talk about your Jesus experiences, talk about your stories. You don't need to preach, you don't need to start. I think if we're a bit tired when people start moralizing. Yeah. It is important, therefore, that you and I, when we talk about our Jesus experiences, our stories, what we don't realize we do is what we prepare souls to encounter Christ. And please remember this, by talking about our Jesus experiences, what happened through our lives. You should not say, hey, I don't want to talk about the adultery in my life. No, talk about it. When you meet somebody else and say, I was adulterous, I was a sinful person, and then I encountered Jesus. And you might be talking to a person who's also committing adultery, and he says, okay, if you can do it, I can do it. Yeah. Talk about your feelings. I have a friend of mine who never shied of telling the world, not standing on a pulpit, but whenever he could, of saying he was the cause of the failure in his marriage. And he would even say what he did, which was rather shameful. And I thought in doing that, uh, he was being honest, but even more sharing his feelings and then how he came to find Christ once again. So don't be moralizing, don't be constantly preaching, but share your Christ stories. And in sharing your Christ stories, your Jesus experiences, you prepare souls to encounter Jesus Christ. Finally, in Luke's gospel, Jesus was the one who came for all, for Jews and for Gentiles, for saints and for sinners. I want to end by saying this. Luke never created a cozy club for only Jews who followed um, a certain way of life. The church is not a cozy club for saints. The church is a field hospital, caring for wounded souls in the battlefield of life, drawing wounded souls to Jesus Christ. Remember that it's not that we go and just put a bandage over a soul, but we heal through the mercy of God. We bring them back to Christ and bring them and heal these wounded souls. I hope the feast of St. Luke inspires you to form friendships, to speak of Jesus Christ, to be a witness, to write perhaps your own orderly account. and never stop sowing seeds of faith gently, yeah, without being aggressive, without moralizing, without preaching, just sharing your vulnerable stories of how the Lord encountered you in your sin, in your sickness, and then He raised you to new life. May the Lord bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. If you feel, do share this teaching with your friends, with your family. Um, Subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so. It'll just take you a minute, and leave your thoughts, leave your comments. It's great. You don't have to write a perfect comment. You can write what touched you in this teaching. God bless you, everybody. And I'll see you on Monday. Remember, today is Saturday. I'll see you next on Monday. Today is the 18th. I'll see you. I generally record one day in it, or rather, I put out the video at 4 o'clock Indian Standard Time, one day before. So the next teaching will be out on Sunday evening at 4 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Bye for now.